Welcome to the High Ticket Success Podcast, where premium coaches, consultants, and advisors come for bold strategies, big breakthroughs, and real results. I'm your host, Dave DeBoe. Hey gang, welcome back. Today, my special guest is an old friend. He sure as heck doesn't look old. Some of us are looking old. He doesn't look old. But Dustin Mathews is someone I've known for quite a few years. And Dustin, I was trying to remember, it was through Glazer Kennedy that we connected, that's for sure. I was trying to remember what year it was. It was like 08, 09,
Oh
07.
man, if it was that, what popped in my head was 2014. Not that it just came to me. I don't know if
Oh, it was
that's the
way
actual
before. It was
number.
way before that,
Way?
my friend. Yeah, way before that.
Okay.
In fact, amazingly,
Yeah.
I found an old CD. Is that a blast from the past or what?
Oh man, I love that. Good surprise.
Oh
Good
my goodness. So
surprise.
this is from 2011. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2010-ish or earlier that we met. But
Oh,
anyhow, I met Dustin and his then partner Dave Van Hoos at a mastermind we were all part of with Glazer Kennedy Inner Circle.
yeah.
Bill Glazer was our leader. And these guys at that time had a very, very interesting company called Speaking Empire. And they helped bumbleheads like me who weren't very good at speaking to get way better, especially at platform speaking, speaking in front of groups and selling our stuff from stage. In fact, these guys talk about high ticket. I signed up for their, can't remember what it was called, Power Day or something like that, and
That's right.
went down to Tampa and got the VIP treatment and got coached 101, and their team rebuilt my deck from scratch and sent me home. And the first time I used the pitch you guys gave me, I think I did $35,000 worth
All
of
right.
business thanks to that. I got a little trophy on my back because
I see it
I did
there.
did a good
Yes.
job with these guys. So yeah, near and dear to my heart. And Dustin definitely knows a lot about high ticket sales, high ticket success. So Dustin, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Dave, I'm thrilled, man. I'm excited. Showing that blast from the past there. I always think of like what's the lesson that I want to learn, but I want to share with folks. And it said the movement on there. That was one of those kind of misdirections in life, and not misdirection because we
Yeah,
learn from it, right?
yeah, yeah.
That's the entrepreneurial spirit of trying to go and say, okay, we got this thing running. Let's go build the thing. And it's actually if I just go back and optimize and make this thing great, we can have great success. So that was the lesson from that CD.
Well, hey, you learned something. And anyhow,
Yep,
everybody was doing CDs back then, so it
that's
was kind
right.
of the door. So that was then. This is
Yeah,
now. Let's catch everybody
yeah,
up onto what Dustin Mathews is doing as of 2025.
yeah. So Dave, I mean, you talked about speaking, and that's always been near and dear to my heart, and kind of comes from personal development, having read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and being exposed, if you will, or introduced is probably the better way to say it, to the ulterior seminar and education world. And so that just lit my fire. And I've always thrived like in seminars and live events because it's that seed of education, right? To see the aha go, to see you grow or see a business grow. And so now what I'm doing based on what I learned at Speaking Empire is I'm putting people into live events for many different companies. So I was kind of in the front of the house,
Hmm.
if you will. And I've always been a marketer and kind of a techie guy. And so now I'm more behind the scenes and really empowering, coaches, authors, experts that want to do live in-person events and helping put people in their rooms.
So putting cheeks in seats, as we say.
That's right. Cheeks and seats, souls and seats, butts and seats. Everyone has a different way of saying it, but I
Yeah.
like yours. Cheeks and seats. Makes you
Well, that
smile.
that makes a ton of sense because yeah, even when it was you and Dave working together, he was kind of the rah-rah front of the room kind of jump up and down
Yep.
kind of guy. You were more of the strategic guy in the background, the marketing side of things. So very, very cool. So
Yeah.
how long you been focused on the marketing side, helping people fill up their events?
I would say ever since I got started, it's kind of one of those age-old challenges in this world, right? In our arena, we're always under the gun to put people on a webinar. In my particular day to day, it's always putting people into a room. And I remember at Speaking Empire, I did that a lot. And I've done that in some form or fashion. In terms of what we're doing at Media Optimizers, we've been doing this for about 5 years. However, each of us have been doing it for, I would say,
A
I know
long time.
that's maybe hard to believe, but the principles, we've been doing it for 20 plus years, right? And
Mm-hmm.
through many different iterations. So,
Back in the day when we first met with Glazer Kennedy, that was a big part of what I was doing. I was working with
yeah.
a guru up here in Canada, and my job was to put cheeks and seats for his seminar company. And I tell you what, it worked like gangbusters until it didn't. I mean, this is how old I am, and this is how long ago it was. But I mean, our best methodologies for quite a while were newspaper ads,
Yes.
direct mail, those two radio ads, like old school media. That's changed a lot over the years. So, what are you guys focusing on when you start working with a client?
Yeah.
I'm going to assume the majority of everything that you do is online. What are you finding is working best for you guys these days for getting people in seats?
Actually, just to share, just kind of, a lot of the old traditional media that you mentioned, we actually still use except for newspaper.
Hmm.
So we do direct mail. Oftentimes, it's not what one would call cold, meaning like if you liken it to online, Dave, seeing an ad for the first time, that's kind of a cold experience. Like you don't know
Hmm.
who that person. You see an ad, you click on it. Direct mail kind of can be that same thing where you've never gotten a piece of direct mail from Dave DeBow here, but he emails you one and then he invites you to a
Hmm.
seminar. So we don't typically do that. We do it after someone has registered, right? To make sure that they actually show up.
Make sure
Because
they show up because are these typically free
yeah,
events?
it can be. We do all
Yeah.
sorts of gamuts, but I would say our primary focus has been preview events of lately, and that's that free model, where
Hmm.
someone gets to come to a 2 hour session, and from there, they get often introduced to a workshop that's 3 days for some price, and we could talk about that. And then
Hmm.
ultimately, which is the name of your show, it's the high ticket, right? And so
Right.
some people are, if you think about this model as dating or as a relate, like you can't ask for 50 grand cold, meaning for
Yeah,
the very first
you
time.
can't, that's
Yeah.
not the ad they're seeing. Pay me 50 grand for
Yeah.
real estate coaching. Nobody's clicking
Right.
on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to introduce them, right? You give them a piece of the 2 hour, it's free, right? They're skeptical, of course. They come, they get to know you or a speaker that represents you. Then they come spend more time with you for those that raise their hand at the 3 day. And then eventually, then they see your systems, your process, they see the proof, the testimonials, the case studies, all that. And then they go to that high ticket. So Dave, to your question, like what is working? Digital is working well, but here's what I'll tell you in this age of AI. What we found recently is that if you've been doing this for a while, if you've been in the high ticket world, you generally know who your avatar is, right? Maybe you've sold some people. You probably bought high ticket stuff, and you're a product of the product, so you have a general understanding. What we find is that what we're finding right now is the messaging is getting watered down. So AI is a great tool. We use it every day, but it's oftentimes very vanilla. And so if you don't
Hmm.
get this right, like if you don't load it up with your customer avatar, your ICP, your ideal client profile, if you don't feed it the right information, you're going to get a very generic thing. And then you're going to end up in the sea of sameness, competing against everything else.
Yeah.
It's going to be vanilla. So what I would say, I know digital is the answer. Yet, yes, we do a lot of advertising on Facebook and YouTube. But what we find is when you can get really tight on your messaging, which is classic Dan Kennedy, classic marketing,
Hmm.
speak to that person, speak to their needs, that hunger, that desire. And the better you do that, the more likely you are to eventually turn them into a high ticket.
So, Dustin, I don't know if you're at liberty to share,
Yeah.
but if you could, maybe you could walk us through an example of one of the clients that you've worked with or are working with,
Yeah.
what niche they're in, kind of what their model looks like, what that initial, like just kind of walk us through down the whole path from A
Yeah.
to Z, if you would.
Yeah. Dave, if we've got time, I can give two models. So
Sure.
I'll start with one that people might know or can go find online. That is the Aspire Tour. This is a little bit different in that what they do is they often use a face or a celebrity or a group of celebrities.
So first of
And
all,
what
tell us
they
what Aspire is and what
Oh,
it's all about.
it's the world's largest business conference, world's
Okay.
largest business tour. And so often what they do is they'll invite or get speakers that are celebrities that are known in the business space and personal development space, and they'll use them as draw cards. And so the lesson for everyone here is, never underestimate the power of a person. If you're a faceless conference, that's tricky. You can for sure do that, but oftentimes those are built on the back of a founder, a likable character. And so the lesson for everyone is, if you want to do high ticket and sell it at an event, make sure to position yourself or somebody. And so this model essentially is a very low ticket, like a 19, 29, 39, 49. And there's different tiers. And what happens is people buy a ticket, they come to this event, and then they're introduced to continuing education, a 3-day event, right? And then at that event, they're introduced to higher back-end programs, events, coachings, all that. And so that's one model.
So for the Aspire guys, give me an example. Like most recently, who was the celebrity they kind of tied their wagon to? What did that first low cost event look like? Was it as a stadium? Was it a tour around the country? Just kind of.
Yeah, for sure. If I remember correctly, the first one was in Texas. The first one that they did. And what they did is they got a big conference center, not a stadium yet at that point in the game, but what they did is they got a big conference center. And I believe there was about 2,000 people at that first event. So there was a great deal of investment in this. Now, this is from people that had done this event, kind of model before. So it wasn't like I'm advocating, if this is your first event, go do this model, but it is a model. And so what they did is they marketed, and if I remember correctly, they got a local celebrity. I think Emmitt Smith, the football player, if I remember correctly, in Texas and Dallas, he's
huge. Well, football's huge in Texas, right? For crying out loud, yeah.
And then they got one of the sharks from Shark Tank as well, because it's good to get a local celebrity. So this is where the strategy comes in. It's good to get someone local that people actually want to see, but also we're all here to sell a high ticket program, so we want to make sure that person is strategic. Maybe they have some business interest as well. So the messaging, it's like, yes, they're famous. Yes, they're known, but also they have business. So then we can kind of march up the gradient, if you will. And then Kevin O'Leary was there. He was a, shark from Shark Tank.
Of course he was.
Dragon's Den up in your neck of the woods, right?
Yeah.
But Shark Tank here in the US. And there was a few others as well. And then there were people that you've never heard of. And those were the speakers that were there to offer continuing education, whether that was a real estate program that they had or a financial program. And that was the model. They were there to get people to raise their hand and come to a 3-day workshop, of which then they could offer the high ticket program too.
Cool. So they had, I'm not asking you to be exact on this, but they had a couple of thousand people that spent $20 or $30 to attend this event. What was it, 3-4 hours?
It was an all-day event. In this particular case,
full day
event.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they had a multitude of speakers there, all inviting them to the same 3-day thing or different 3-day things.
So the celebrities there weren't,
they didn't
selling
offer
anything or offering. They were just there to impart wisdom and motivate the crowd. Yeah. In this particular case, if I remember, typically in this model, there's usually 3 slots. So you want to introduce folks, and these are kind of perennial in the space. Yeah. It is some sort of real estate offer. It can be a stock offer. They didn't do that, but typically it's that. And then generally there's a business type offer in this space. And so I think they started with 2, if I'm not mistaken, because they were very certain about that. But ideally, you can do as many as 3, because again, you're not trying to sell the high ticket. You're just trying to get people to raise their hand and say, "Oh yes, I have an interest in real estate," or no, I like stock. And
so they got 2 or 3 different events that they're promoting at this event. And do you remember? So it's $20-$30 to get in the door for the full day thing. Do you remember what the price point was on the 3 days? Were those like $500, $1,000? What was?
A couple of things too. It's smart if you're going to do an event this style that you don't just sell a 20 or 30. So they had a couple of tiers. I can't remember how high, maybe up to $1,000, and that gets you, you can get in early.
Shake hands with Emmitt. Yep.
Something like that. Typically, when you do this model, where even if it's a free model, where someone comes to learn for 2 hours, when you do the 3-day type workshop, next step, these can range anywhere from $99 all the way up to really $2,000. I mean, we have a client right now that runs a free model, and then they offer a $1,500 3-day event.
Hmm.
And for everyone listening in, obviously at a higher price point, you're going to have less people, but those are going to be more qualified.
Hmm.
Versus if you say, "Hey, come to my 3 day and it's only $99," you're going to get a lot more people in your funnel, so to say, at the next step, but they're not going to be as qualified to eventually buy your high ticket. So it's kind of the
Yeah.
blend and balance of personal preference, but also the
Plus
numbers.
at 1,500, they tend to show up.
Yes, that
They
is
tend to
correct.
they get their money's worth. Okay, very, very interesting. So that was the first model. Now you're talking
Yep.
about, you said there's a second model. What one's that?
Yeah, and that's really the free model. They kind of dovetail into each other.
Hmm.
So, that one was a paid ticket to come, basically learn information, maybe see a celebrity if you can. The other one is more of a model that we run on a day-to-day basis with a few clients. And what that is let's say we come to your city, we're often going to do 8, 9. It really can fluctuate, but not just one. We're going to do, let's just say 8 in your city, and we're going to do them in different parts of the city because they, where you're from,
Hmm.
maybe if you lived on the east side, you don't drive to the west side, or back where I was from, we didn't drive
Yeah.
across this bridge to go to a seminar. You either had to have the seminar here, and those people went here, and the people across the bridge, they went to their seminar over
Right.
there.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
basically what we would do is what we do now is we market and fill those events. There's typically 8 of them and they're 2 hours. And we think about time of day. We think about day of the week because all of that matters, right? Somebody that can come in the middle of the day, it's kind of telling about, they have some time freedom. Maybe they're in sales, maybe they're a realtor, right?
Maybe
Versus
they're
maybe somebody
unemployed.
that maybe they're unemployed. That is very, very true. Spoken like a guy who knows for sure. You know this model. And then your Saturday and Sunday, that might be the busy professional that just can't get away. So they have to use the weekend. So anyway, it's a 2 hour and there's 8 of them. And ideally want to register enough people. I would say about 1,500 people, hoping to see if you're lucky,
Between the
400 in
eight
that
events. Between the eight
between the 8
events.
events.
Got
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Yep. And the numbers fluctuate depending on time of year here. So if someone's fact checking me here, these numbers might, be different. It's the summer months, right? Versus, in the
Sorry, you
start
said
of the
hopefully
year.
hopefully getting how many people registered total?
I would say 12 to 1,400 people
And
registered.
hoping for how many to show up?
I would say from 300 to 400. If your show rate is
Hmm.
really good, maybe you're seeing 500.
So
If you're lucky,
basically 30%
yeah.
is kind of
I
the
would say you're
number.
closer to 20% is where I would be. And
20%
these,
show up. Wow.
yeah, this would be, and it also just depends on your budget too. So if you only
Hmm.
spent, let's say 20 grand in a market, your numbers would be way less than what
Hmm.
I said. We typically like to enter a market, and it depends if you're in LA versus Tampa versus,
Yeah.
Jacksonville, Florida. Depends on what you might spend. And so ideally, you want to see those folks. You want to see about, I would say, 250 people. And if you converted 20% of them, again, assuming that you're at a little bit of a higher price point, you're going to see about 100 people, 80 to 100 people at the workshop. And then from there, there's X% that will go to your high ticket program.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of numbers. That
Yeah.
is so interesting that it makes so much sense though, especially like a city like Miami, the big cities that Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver in Canada,
Yeah.
New York, Los Angeles. There's no way you can just have one event and
Right.
expect to get a ton. So having 8 events in the same city, over what time frame, Dustin? Just out of curiosity.
Definitely within a week's time frame,
Okay.
often 5 to 6 days.
So do
Yeah.
you have sometimes a couple events going on different locations, same days kind of thing, or you have
It's typically some form of a lunch type session and an evening session. So
okay.
two, and it can be at the same hotel. This is where it kind of gets real interesting. Like how big
Hmm.
is the city? How much budget do we have to spend? And so it can be at 2 different hotels. So you might start it in the morning or lunch at one hotel and then drive, 20 minutes away to another part of the city and do your evening session. And then, the next day, you might do 2 events at that same hotel. Then you move on all throughout the city. So, and
Yeah.
the reason for that is often some of these companies that we're working with, it's a machine, and there's only so many speakers out there. We're always
Right.
looking for speakers, by the way. Um, it's a machine, and so they have to, do this city, and then they fly on to the next city, and they start the rotation again and again.
Yeah. Interesting,
Yep.
interesting stuff. The little innovation that I kind of came up with back in the day when I was in the event business was going to much, much smaller markets. So I
Yeah.
remember when I started working with this guy, even 20 years ago now, he was spending about 20 grand in the bigger cities to get a couple of hundred people out to an event kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's the way it worked. And I said, hey, why don't you try some of these smaller markets that nobody ever goes to? So we spent half
Smart.
as much money in a city of where I live at, actually, of at that time 80,000 people, and we ended up getting 600 people out to a
Wow.
lot. We had overflow, so we had to put on a second event to fill the overflow, and so that
Yep.
became our model at that time. Was, yeah, we did the big cities, but then we went to those smaller cities,
Yeah.
60 to 150,000 people that nobody went to. And very soon people started copying that. And we started seeing the
Yeah.
big guys coming to the small cities. But yeah, it's a fascinating business. So Dustin, a lot of people are not at that stage. They,
Yeah.
because honest to God, it's tens of thousands of dollars to make
Yep.
this machine work just in marketing expense. Then hotels are crazy expensive nowadays and the whole bit. If somebody's kind of on the smaller scale and
Yeah.
they like the idea of trying out doing an event, what
Yeah.
advice would you have for them?
I would say do it in your own backyard or
Yeah.
do it where you have support. Oftentimes that's going to be your backyard, meaning like let's say you do have an office. Like if you could do it at your office, great. If they have a conference center, you could start there. What I would say is if you are going to ramp up, the hardest thing to do is actually get the people registered and then get them there. So that's like
Yeah.
a 1-2 punch. And so I would invest my money into marketing, right? Because if you can't get someone to raise their hand to register for your event, it doesn't matter how awesome the room looks and the $5,000 projector you have and the roll up banners with testimony, like you can do all that stuff, but the hardest thing to do is get someone to register and then show up to the event. If you can crack that code, or when you crack that code, then you can scale, you can add the niceties to it. And so me starting off my money from scratch. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. It's a small city. I would do one here. I've got,
Mhm.
my house here. I can print off my printer and not pay, $20 a page at the hotel, right? Like I can
Yeah.
use resources here if I had to. And then I would work on the marketing to get the people there. And so that's what I would recommend is start small, dedicate, maybe a few $1,000s to some ads, right? Or if you're lucky enough to have a list or some influence already, you might consider going to meetups or RIA clubs or whatever, do small talks to get people to your main event. But I would figure
Mhm.
out what is your mechanism. Are you going to go do it manually? Or are you going to run ads? And I would run a very small event and test your marketing first. That's how I do it.
So for folks that aren't familiar with this, let's say you're talking about the free model. So we touched
Yeah.
on that, but it usually goes free or very low cost event. Then you're inviting them to a 2 or 3 day workshop type thing, and that price
Yep.
point can be whatever, should be something. So whatever, 199 to 1,500 bucks, whatever, to show they're serious, and you're covering costs at that point, maybe making a slight profit, but that's not even the goal there. And then at
Right.
the 2 or 3 day thing, that's where you got a really a lot of time to dig in, and that's where you end up offering your high ticket product or service. So what are you seeing these days as being the price points? Because
Yeah.
you're dialed into this. What are kind of the
Yeah.
typical price points of the high ticket offers that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say on a minimum scale, like presented from stage, or maybe when you're doing a 3 day event, you're actually meeting and sitting down with everybody. That gives you a lot of flexibility with price. A lot of people think it's the price set from stage, but oftentimes, realtors might call this pocket listings, right? Like, hey, we've got a package for you. We just can't explain all the packages we have from the stage. So I would say at a low end to make the model most effective and worth time, you would want to be at 15,000, no less than 10,000 really, but I
Hmm.
would say 15,000, and I've seen up to about 50,000. What is the difference? Well, a 50,000, let's use real estate as an example, that might actually get you someone that is a real estate investor from a different part of the country, of course, to fly into your city and either take you to the courthouse or to take you to properties to take a look at them, to work with you one on one on scripting your phone calls to sellers. And so why the big investment? Well, that's because we're going to give you a personalized experience. Maybe at the $15,000 level, that's more of a group program that gives you access to tools and contracts or resources that would make your life easier. But really, it's not as personalized as that one-on-one type experience.
Yeah.
But 15 to 50 is what I would
Makes
say.
sense. Awesome.
Yeah.
Dustin, this has been a lot of fun, taking a little trip down memory lane for me for back in
As
the event days. I'm sure some people listening or watching this would like to connect with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll put a link here in the show notes, but the media optimizers, and put the in front of it, themediaoptimizers.com/live-events. And so we'll put that link in. I know that's a long one. We'll put that link in there for those that are interested to check that out. And then also, I love LinkedIn. My birthday just passed, so it's blown up with all the birthday things that come through. But when it's not my birthday, I'm usually on top of it and responding to messages. So for those that are interested, you can see me on LinkedIn at the Dustin Mathews, and Mathews is with 1 T.
Perfect. Dustin, always a pleasure. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, everybody, take care, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks for listening to the High Ticket Success Podcast. Want to be featured? Share your story and inspire other premium coaches, consultants, and advisors? Apply now at highticketsuccesspodcast.com/guest.